Angelingua gloriosi, corporis mysterium, sanguinisque preciosi, quem in mundi pretium. Fructus ventris generosi, rex effudigentium. Nobis status, nobis natus, ex intacta Virgine, et in mundo conversatus, farso verbis semine.
Please help me to welcome Professor Majawa. A little bit different, and that means the two presenters are going to be invited immediately, and our questions will come after their presentations. So the second presenter is Dr. Anthony Chukwudi Njoko. His topic is Returning Relevance, Voice and Integrity, African Catholicism towards celebrating a century of Vatican Council II. Also, I appeal that you join me in welcoming Dr. Njoko to the table. And address us and make his presentation while Dr. Anthony Njoko will be taking the second.
So my name is Clement Majawa, Director of School of Graduate Studies at the Catholic University of Eastern Africa. I am grateful to the Lord that I have a background of dogmatic theology in Africa for my licentiate, then for my doctorate, again in Rome at Urbaniana, but also a licentiate spiritual theology at Angelicum, and then again somewhat in education at Heathrow University, and also I'm in education, and also some studies at St. John's University in New York. So when I have been reflecting, it has helped me maybe to see what should we do to integrate our faith and our culture. And then yesterday I was very touched in the conclusion by the Archbishop, when we said we need homegrown and unique transformative methodologies to bring Christian mysteries, closer to our people in the local context so as to improve their quality of life. Now, as you can see the heading, Patristic Education for the Renewal of Catholic Intellectual Heritage in Schools and Institutions of Higher Learning. And we're saying the paradigm of dual intellectual heritage in Africa. So if we are asking, for example, in education, what should we do today, especially for the future of our church? And I underline those words, a paradigm of dual intellectual heritage, whereby on one hand we have the Christian, intellectual heritage, but also on the other we have the African intellectual heritage. That's why when we look at education as also a means, a mode of evangelization, then I think today in our school we need to be serious about this issue. And that is why that was already in 2004, with our students, we made a lot of research regarding why people are saying that it seems education is being divorced. Culture, culture from religion. Maybe there is a lack of spiritual values. So what should we do? Of course, one, we say our students are learning Christian ethics. But again, we found out many students are not comfortable. When it comes maybe to religious education, they don't feel comfortable. Therefore, in our research, in the region, I may say region, but I think also beyond, we say we need something maybe unique. And for us as a theologian, something which is unique must be grounded in the scriptures, in the tradition of the church. But again, we say we need to move further. What about looking at our culture? That's why the dual intellectual heritage. So we designed that course because in the region, the needs assessment showed that the people need this. So we did that. I remember it took about 2 years. Came up again with a course which we refer to as patristic education, because again of the holistic approach to education. And it's very, very interesting that from that time even up to now, we have got Muslims. They feel comfortable because if you bring in, for example, Christian ethics, introduction to the Bible, some feel uncomfortable. But even those people who are educated, others Muslims, or people for the faith, they are comfortable again with it. I thought it necessary to begin with, that. And again, this is the book we are using. It is challenging all the theologians. Let us write something now, because we talk about inculturation, maybe up there, but what about on the ground? And at least we see it is working. So we have got a book on this. I hope maybe get to donate one. I've already brought 4 copies. They are already we are working on the 3rd edition. So I leave one maybe with the dean of for the C1, so that again, as a potential get was that. So again, aware of the time factor, I will try to be a bit more fast. So that is actually the outline. And as you can see, there is a presentation, the theme of the conference, just trying to bring together the argument, that paradigm shift from what we have been doing, in our schools. We are saying for the Catholicism of the future has really to integrate, the heritage we have got from the Christian intellectual heritage, but also from our culture. And there we see it is working. It is working. So, for example, we have taught over, 1,000, students. Because these students, as I said, they belong to at least various parts of, Africa. I know some of my students again from Nigeria. And those are doing wonders, wherever they are working. Yes. So again, as you can see, the topic itself, yes, next. Yes. We are saying, of course, evangelizing mission of Catholic education in schools is to integrate. Another way, we can use different images or metaphors, inculturation. Christian intellectual heritage into the local African religious cultural tradition, leading to a discovery that both processes are given by God. It's very unfortunate that sometimes again, maybe in international fora, maybe in Europe or in the US, people trying to present the image of an African as if maybe they don't have a systematic way of looking at God and his own context. And we say it's unfair. If you really want to become a credible, let's say, theologian or educationist, you have got to respect the two. Most of us, again, we've been in Rome, we've been in Germany. And again, you know what happens. Now, here, for example, in Italy, isn't it? You have to study again in Italian. But again, I'll come this way. What categories are we using now? Because every category, has a philosophy, has a wisdom. And unless that is not taken into consideration, we are just hanging up there. I was very impressed with, the dean, my colleague, talking about this liturgy. And he told him, the cardinal, you are here. Give my people a chance to express themselves. Yes? Just okay, thank you. We give you that. It's okay. So I'm talking about humanistic education. 3 levels of presenting education. From a humanity, a human being, and then a Christian, and then maybe later, okay, religious and all that. Okay, next. So, aims of the presentation is there. Acknowledges deterioration of standards and quality and holistic education in the Catholic schools. What we have found out is there is a challenge of the demarcation, divorcing between, for example, between Catholic identity and African culture. Shame, for example, sense of shame is a beautiful value in us. Now, some of my cousins, my uncles who have been masters of PhD, he has been in US and he comes back and he says, you take that away. Because I'm going to get it. No, cover your body as an African. So that's what we're talking about. Those values again to be, respected. What I call also number 3, African Christian schizophrenia in schools. Maybe it's the syncretism between African culture and African Christian life. Crisis of gap deficiency leading to education dwarfism. In many schools, even those which are called Catholics, it's only in name. But the spirit, the ethos of Catholicism, you find, it is not there. Therefore, we are suggesting a dual intellectual heritage, values of patristic education, because the church fathers have written a lot about that, and again also African education. I'm saying this idea, of what maybe we're discussing. Already you can imagine, immediately after the Vatican II, it was already addressed, for example, at this conference of Pachek, conference in Leopoldville, in Congo. I've given a lot of work, but again, to make the states of Christianity to be intelligible to younger generation, new and to the world. Yes, next. Yeah, patristic education is not totally new to African intellectual heritage because of some of the historical similarities in the learning and teaching wisdom. And then especially here, we talk about, for example, North Africa, isn't it again, and the contribution they have made, to the world, understanding of education. Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. Vision of intellectual heritage. 6 qualities. Yes, go ahead. Sorry again for that. And even, for example, I'm relating it to UNICEF. It was very interesting, and I remember one of our doctoral students wrote a very good word on that. What, for example, UNICEF, is teaching about today, even UNESCO, you see it, for example, related to the wisdom of some of the church fathers. I just brought here, for example, writing about patristic education, and even some, as I said, are of a Somali, origin. Yes, go ahead, even the World Bank, again, you see that. Qualities of okay, church fathers, the teachers, can you go to that? The one of teachers, sorry, down. Teachers, sorry, I know that I'm very, very frustrated. Teachers, just want to share with that one. Teachers, this is very, very important. Ideal teachers for Catholic schools in Africa and worldwide. This again does not only start with Christ, but even it goes back to the times of Socrates, times of Plato, Aristotle, and even the others. And I think what is important, again, as you will see it, even Christ himself, of course, understood also Plato, Thales, and even the other, ancient philosopher. Yes, next. Anyway, you will see what happens, for example, right now in our schools, because we have commercialized, we have politicized education. You see that picture there. African teachers are charged to offer holistic education. Now, you see the teacher there, isn't it? Now, our educational system. There is an elephant, there is a jackal, there is a lizard, there is a bird, there is a monkey. And he says, hey, for a fair selection, everyone has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. Is that fair? Somebody already coming from a background whereby, he has practiced everything. The computer. And another one, for example, maybe about the Maasais. Those kids have to struggle. But then you are telling them, can you write this composition in computer? The unfairness sometimes, which is enshrined, and unfortunately, sometimes it can even be institutionalized for the moral theologians. Again, institutional evil and what it does to the society. Yes, so these are the problems. I've quoted a German historian there, but also the African, theologians. Yes, next. Socrates, for example, what we are calling in that book, a patristic or Socratic qualities of a noble teacher. Okay, go that. Yeah, like that. A noble teacher is a designer, a constructor, a protector, a transmitter of wisdom for transformation of society. You will find this again, given by Socrates. Okay, when you go to Plato, he says, for example, a true teacher, he's talking about a true teacher. A true teacher's vocation, mission, and identity are based on those qualities. A true teacher should avoid corruption, favoritism, indifferentism, cause of being transparent and advise at oneself. Yes, next. And again, patristic Aristotelian qualities of a true teacher. So for him, he's a wise teacher. Yeah? A wise teacher discusses ideas and facts and not personalities or rumors. Yes, what? To continue now, we know all these. Yes, Gabriel Mahambadi. Okay, and remember, we're talking about life. Patristic education is about quality of life. Yes, next. Next. And I like that of Patrick Kalombe, what he says there. Patrick Kalombe, because I'm talking about a pedagogical turning point, in the Catholic schools, a new way of being a transformative schools in Africa. Remember, we are talking about the future of Catholicism in Africa. And we know education is very, very important. And as we are saying there, recent operational research statistics in Africa, if you read that book of Beaton Benjamin, show that over 75% of the population in Africa is young. The Catholic Church in Africa is called to empower young people by providing them with quality education and a balanced curriculum adapted to African intellectual systems, African spirituality. African countries today should embark on a very broad, expansive and quality education so that they can be truly Catholic and truly African. I know for the conclusion now, I just want to share. Thank you very much for listening.
Appreciate the exuberance, the vigor, the vibrancy, and the charismatic approach Professor Clement has given to his paper. I invite you for this one more time to give him a round of applause. Thank you very much. Without wasting further time, and I'll call upon Dr. Anthony Njoko to begin his presentation.
Thank you very much. I would like to also express my profound gratitude to the previous speaker, Professor Majawa Clement, for a very profound presentation. And it's, let's say, part of the ethos of my own presentation, but I'm really, really very delighted. I'd like to say it before continuing with my paper. My topic is retaining relevance, voice, and integrity, African Catholicism towards celebrating a century of Vatican Council II. I am looking at some kind of projection to the next 50 years. We are celebrating already 50 years of Vatican II. Vatican II has been a watershed, a momentous council for Africa in particular. It was the first council that Africa attended in modern times, as a council that empowered Africa a lot, a council that Africa attended, let's say, fully. It's a council that exposed our magisterium, and indeed, all of us, as a council that opened our eyes, if you like, to understand the church a little bit more. Just as we are gradually taking over from the missionaries. And so it is a very important council for us. And most of what this council opened up have not yet actually been appropriated by the African church. So my projection is what I offer you. What can African church, areas of emphasis, to work at in the coming years and decades, so that when there's time to celebrate the centenary of Vatican II Council, my goal ahead high. One area is something that African Church has been doing already. I'm not saying they're not doing it, but some area to emphasize is the prophetic voice. You know, Africa needs to work on its voice, and in the area of politics, the area of social life, and because the church is an agent of development, and looks like among the institutions of development, the church is the only one really standing firmly in Africa. And to be a major disappointment if the church caps in, compromises, begins to speak the same language as our politicians who have in many respects failed Africa. So to retain relevance, to retain the dignity of the church, the prophetic voice is an area that the church must not compromise. Indeed, the church should highlight that prophetic dimension of its work and outreach within the African community. The second area, because of time, I would have loved to expand a little bit on these topics, but I have a very limited time. The second area is the African liturgy. We also gained a lot from the Second Vatican Council because of the allowing of the use of the vernacular, the use of local instruments and all that in the church. And we have done a lot of compositions also, but there are many areas that we also need to still pay attention to. For example, with the sacraments of baptism is not celebrated as fully as it should be. It's not, we don't have enough songs to accompany the celebration of the sacrament of baptism. And we have already pointed out in the earlier paper challenges with regard to the sacrament of reconciliation and confession. There have been works written actually by some of our scholars comparing the Christian approach to reconciliation and the African approach to reconciliation. And it's important that we take this seriously because the church also allows us, through Vatican II Council, to experiment. It is an aspect of the provision of Sacrosanctum Concilium that probably we are not taking seriously in the African church. We are allowed to experiment, even in the area of marriage, this Ebangu, Epamiuku, or whatever it is called in various parts of, let's say, the southeast, that we have this opportunity to experiment. And theologians have done a lot of work and placed in the hands of our magisterium, the teaching authority. And it will be wonderful also if they begin to pay attention to the suggestions of their theologians, and at least on the level of experiment, see what can come out of putting into practice what has already been dealt with at a theoretical level by the theologians and other thinkers. The other area, and that also includes the creation of rituals. I presented a paper somewhere with regard to the cultural calendar, or what we might call the African calendar, and the liturgical calendar, making effort to marry the two, all the way from Advent to, or if you like to use January to December, if you want to use Advent to Christ the King. This is an important move, because then we'll be taking our faith to our homes. We'll be able to appropriate, take into account what people are doing at home. That is not bad. And those things that were demonized unnecessarily by the foreign missionaries who did not understand our culture. Those things that were left behind to our own detriment, if you like, again goes on. There's nothing wrong with it. And the creation of prayers. Because of course we are spontaneous, we go to do this and then we immediately create something on our own. Yeah, some priests are very spontaneous and very creative, or can begin to standardize some of these creations and carry our people along. That's in the area of the African liturgy. The other one is intensified dialogue. There are areas of dialogue. I always say that people of Islamic culture should be accepted for whatever reason. You know, they are already banned. That kind of position. Because he was taking a position based on what he learned when he was growing up and became a bishop before going to the council. So at the council he was one of those who were quite very uncomfortable with the issue of religious freedom. But we have come to stay with that, and we know that this is an important area we need to pay attention to. The other one is catechesis. Let me immediately say that when we're talking about something like sensus fidelium, it doesn't fall from the sky. And we know that our catechesis is, let's say, directed to the younger generation, to those who are coming for First Holy Communion, confirmation, and that's really where it ends. And then the next time they have any encounter is for marriage instruction. And there's a huge gap in between. And this huge gap is also creating crisis of faith. People understand very little. And so we have to find a way of intensifying catechesis, not taking things for granted, but making sure that there's an education ongoing. It's a key area of attention. Probably we just get a curriculum, and I'm happy that my brother here mentioned this curriculum matter, not a curriculum from Urbaniana, Rome, and then people just study it for 4 years for philosophy, another 4 years for theology, and they'll get priests. This is not the only thing that should be done. This type of curricula should be revisited for our own good. And attention should not just be placed on the intellectual development of Prince getting a first class, summa cum laude, but also on character and monitoring this character. Because we have so many problems, not coming from the people of God, but coming from the priests. The priests are the arrowhead of many problems and crises we have in our church. And if they are not properly formed and oriented, then we have more and more crises, moving around our church. The area of healing, for example, is a case in point. Some of the things the priests do with our sacramentals. I'm happy the liturgists are here. They bring brand new sacramentals that are not in the liturgical books, that have not been taught in the seminaries, and they are pushing it around the whole place. So we need to pay attention to these misnomers in the area of formation of clergy. And the other one I mentioned here is the area of self-reliance. If we have become our own church, we also need to safeguard our voice. And we cannot safeguard our voice when we are still beggarly, when we are still dependent on the churches in Europe and America for sustenance. We have to find a way also of becoming resourceful, of doing what they try to pick up the resourcefulness that you find in the churches in Europe and America, and becoming self-reliant, so that we can have a voice to be reckoned with. Because if you are dependent, he who pays the piper dictates what? The tune. So there's so much problem in that area, and it's not just about enhancing our voice, it's also enhancing our capacity to reach out to our brothers and sisters who have challenges. We are educated very highly, in various institutions around the world, and we should be able to use the skills and capacities we have acquired in this to also show the light, also in the area of economy. Church and education, I will not talk about that because my brother here has already, exhausted it in a way that is exciting, And related to that is what I call healing the African psyche of huts caused by colonial and Christian missionary enterprise. Things like inferiority complex that is endemic in our environment. That even affects so-called highly educated people who are PhD holders, and professors. They are still intimidated and feeling inferior unnecessarily. And we need to do something about that. How do we get this inferiority complex out of our system? Some of our politicians who we blame for cutting away money to Europe and America and other are suffering from chronic inferiority complex. This is really their problem. So as if they are in their right senses, they will take away their father's property and go and camp it somewhere where another person is using it. But because of this idea to identify, to be part of the assimilation that will go from the French and all that, and this white mystique, we have to find a way to re-educate the consciousness. Because if we are not able to do that, we might not even be able to find corruption. Because at the root of the corruption is also this endemic inferiority complex. And the other one, which my brother here has mentioned, and then I start winding down, is the recovery of our best heritage. You know, there was a demonization, you know, planned or not, by the colonialists, but particularly by Christian missionaries who came to our land. A demonization of our culture, a demonization of our cuisine, a demonization of our herbal heritage, a demonization of things Africa. You know, and this is a huge loss for us in terms of even economy. You know, something that has eroded our ability to take initiatives, eroded our capacity to take on things and do them well. You know, and we have to find a way of doing this recovery, because otherwise they'll be lost for good, and we'll not be able to have them, because many people who have this knowledge are dying off every blessed day, and then we're going for burials. Those who are 80, 90, these are huge libraries that are lost. These are people with great intellect that are lost. These are people with our, let's say, very important knowledge who are gone and gone forever. You know, so there's a whole lot of work that remains for the African church, and this can be achieved if we together begin to pay attention to seriously to the charge, you know, that we find in the Second Vatican Council, have been pushed by several popes. You know, remember Paul VI is telling us, you may and you must have an African church. You know, you have to do something for yourselves. Many popes have told us that. How high can we go? Whose sort of commission are we looking for? Yeah, just one thing and then I end. When I was writing my bachelor's thesis in theology, I had this idea, Rome has killed us, Rome has killed us, Rome has killed us. And then I went to my supervisor. And my supervisor, after reading that first part, he called me in and said, Anthony, you know what? You have to go and look at the documents. He forced me to look at the documents, and when I looked at the documents, I was amazed at the liberality of the so-called Rome. I was shocked at the discovery that we have been given enormous power. Even when Rome makes a recommendation, go and look at your rights, the rights of the church, they will still say, pam, 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 at the discretion of the local ordinary. At the discretion of the local ordinary. At the discretion of the local ordinary. So they have given even provisions, and they have said, you can still overlook this and do what is right for your people. So we have enormous opportunity, and I'm asking that we take those opportunities, you know, embrace the goodness that the church, you know, all the way from the Vatican has given us opportunity and chance for, and do what we can, whether it is in thinking as a theologian, think indigenously too, think in your context too, contextualize, and let us, it's not something one person can do. Come from wherever discipline you are, and let's see what we can do for ourselves, and I'll be with you.
So you will see that, for example, in the African one situation, sure, you have a methodology. Two, you have got the content, but again, related to life all the time. And that is what, you know, patristic education is proposing, you know. And that is why, for example, also we always say, in the methodology of patristic education, which, for example, is not only limited to the church fathers, but even it goes to the Greeks, even again to the Africans. You know, we are saying there are 3 F's. Education should inform the whole truth, let's say, about a particular thing. But secondly, there is formation, and that's where the problem is. From information to the formation of a heart. If you look at a lot of what, you know, syllabi, or maybe, you know, a curriculum, you always say, okay, as you are saying, 1, there is a method, 2, a content. but what about life? Because sometimes, again, and experience, even researchers have shown, the methodology can be clear. The content may be good, but when it comes to life, it's not practical. That's why we are just kind of suggesting that approach. For example, how to dance, isn't it? I remember in some communities, you need the methodology, you need the what, the content, but how to do it? Among my people, for example, in the mornings, isn't it? A kid already started dancing at the mother's back. And later on, when the other things are coming in, then he kind of integrates. So what we are saying is, as you are saying, and you put it very clearly, and especially in patristic education, there is an element which I did not really expound, and that is also paideia. Paideia meaning that anything that is good, anything that is valuable from all cultures, should be preserved and even shared. If there is something good, let's say from the Igbo culture, isn't it? We the one should appreciate that. The people in Europe, maybe North, America, or let's say Asia, again should appreciate that. But anything which is evil, which is bad, fundamentally, surely you will see it will be rejected. In other words, so we are saying here that surely we need a curriculum which embraces, all these values and find a way of how to live that. Number two, you are talking about, I think, the African education. You are saying that, diversity is good, and of course, complementarity. Now you referred to the Igbo, catechism. That, for example, other cultures, can they, accept it? I think that was the understanding. In patristic education, as I said, that issue of life is very, very important. If, let's say, something is good among the Igbo, surely the others, again, should. But sometimes, again, you see the language which may be used may offend, let's say, other people. So, when we are talking about the African values, life, issues or values of justice, peace, family, communion, usually they cut across the border. So, I would think that the catechism we have got to work or to come up with should be focusing, for example, on that. And again, as you are mentioning, the parroting, isn't it? Who is God? God is so and so and so and so. It's only the mind. But again, you will see in Africa, with the initiation, let's say, rites, whereby you've got to follow the individual throughout the life. Somewhere there is a black, and I know there is going to be a challenge on that one. The third, yes, you're talking about, I think, let's say, education as a tool of evangelization. And then you were asking, what kind of tool is that? You brought in the idea of intelligentsia, Catholica. That, again, I've already mentioned, for example, as I was answering his question, that in patristic education, you've got these 3 F's. Intelligence, yes, but what about the heart? If that is formed, then transformation will take place, on the ground. And then you were asking, I think, yes, that how many people can afford, this education, and how can we make it, relevant? The course, for example, patristic education is a common course at the Catholic University. And remember, we deal with this because, let's say, in Malawi, the experience, when I was the pastoral coordinator of Plantar Diocese for 7 years, and also maybe a parish priest, it was a policy, I remember working hand in hand with our educational secretary. When you are admitting students, of course I remember the government had also a role to play. We were saying 75%, that should be controlled by the government. But again, 25% should be controlled by the Catholic Church. And the whole idea was you fill in 25% with especially poor students. But again, there is that vice of corruption. I remember now somebody, Christian, will come with an envelope. Father, I know you are big, can you have? He's given an envelope and there is money. So that again, maybe somewhere you consider maybe his son. And I remember experiencing it very, very well, when the president had invited me to be one of the 12 commissioners, a presidential commission, to look into the politics of education in my country. And I remember, I'm
I'm sorry that...
The first thing I would like to say is that what we are discussing is a complicated matter. It's not a simple yes or no affair. We are discussing something that is going to take us decades. That's why I was looking at a century of Vatican II Council, at least 50 years, which is still very small compared to the work that is to be done. So I would like to state that clearly, that we're not dealing with a simple matter, we're dealing rather with a very complex and complicated matter. And therefore there are no easy solutions. You know, that there are solutions, so well, let's bring it and then this thing is working. And that's why I say the first thing is to create awareness. Increase this awareness. Because the growth that we have in education is really awareness. The wider your awareness, the more you're able to deal with reality. You know, and when we look at our history very closely, then it is also going to, and critically, it is going to help us also to move forward. Let's come to the missionaries. Somebody asked me, you know, are you being fair to the missionaries? And my mind went immediately to Missionaries on Trial, a book, Missionaries on Trial. You know, that places both sides of the coin. Of course, missionaries did a lot of good to us. We cannot deny it. In fact, we have to continue to sing their praises for a very, very long time. Because without the missionaries, so much would not be on our side. You know, I teach history, and when we get to this type of situation, I ask the students, let's look at the positive sides first, before we start critiquing. And when we look at the positive side, there's so much that we owe to the missionaries. Beyond the back customs and all that, look at the whole idea of our orthography. Look at the whole idea of introducing us to literacy. You know, giving us access to other people's texts and collection of wisdom, whether libraries and things like that, and you know, Western style education. You know, we have to, that's the first, that missionaries did a lot of good in our land. You know, yet we cannot, because of that, say they didn't cause troubles also. They caused a lot of confusion in our land. You know, and I'll direct you to someone like C.C. Ago's work, Secularization in Igbo Land. A very powerful work. Or Chiwizu, the West and the rest of us, or particularly Ago. It's a very, it gives you the other side of Western style education. Because sometimes we see too much the positive side. We do not see also the negative side. What do we lose by distancing ourselves from our indigenous language, for example? I mean, we lost our conceptual genius. We lost a connection with our forebears. We lost great teachers who were already there abundantly. You know, we began to feel inferior about the things that held us together. You know, we abandoned so much. We threw so much into the rubbish that shouldn't have been thrown into the rubbish. Chinachebe says it was not necessary to throw overboard so much that was thrown overboard. You know, and so there's so much that we need, so much healing that needs to happen, so much recovery that needs to happen. So when I'm saying that, I'm not saying it in the sense that, oh, they were all bad. No, they did a lot of good, but we also have to admit that there's also the other sides that we need to do something about, and seriously. And that's why, you know, these efforts, I'm particularly enthused by the presentation made by Professor Mayaba. You know, the whole idea of people taking that time and writing this thing and putting it out there and letting it flow out, let the ideas flow out. That's one of the first things we need to do. And that's one of the essence of a conference like this, that we're brainstorming together. You know, if we continue this type of dialogue with our one ourselves and be honest about it and tell ourselves the truth about what is going on, then we are going to go some distance. Yes, my brother there said, how do you deal with the issue of bishops that are not in control of putting in there? And said, oh, there's only Sapong. As if he took it away from me, I would have said, don't you see again Sapong? But yes, there was not just Sapong, there was also Manula in Congo. There are so many, there's Hinze. You know, there are so many people who are making efforts. And we cannot throw that away. So it's a gradual process. And the more
we grow in the complexification of understanding of what is going on, then the more we are going to be able to find a way out of our situation. I can see that he's standing. I think the key thing is let's provoke one another. Let's come out with ideas. Let's gradually begin to do something from wherever angle you are. And one of the great problems we have as colonized people is that we now have also within ourselves, let me put it in Igbo language, our law. Our law is as fighting within the home. And that's one of the worst battles you can face. You can face an enemy outside. But when the battle is now inside, then you have to untie so much. You cannot use this bottle for that to hit your father. You cannot do it. It's not easy. So we have to find a way of dealing with this arrow law. But let's understand first of all that it is arrow law. It is now a battle that we are fighting among ourselves to liberate ourselves, you know, and then do something like what somebody like this has done, and then let's gradually progress from one step to another. And I believe that we'll be able to hand this torch over to people maybe who are more, let's take the example of Socrates and Plato. You know, Socrates started something, and then Plato took it and flew with it. Jesus started something, handed over to 12, and it's all over the place. So some people might take it and run with it. So, but let's keep talking, and let's keep sharpening the whole ideas and put them out there. Who knows? One of our sons, one of our daughters, you know, might just pick it up and run with it and salvage us.
Well, join me to appreciate the two presenters. So, having been fed substantially, intellectually, we now proceed to be fed in the belly, in the refectory. We will gather here at exactly 1:45, less than 30 minutes, so that the visitors will have an opportunity. Good afternoon, everyone. We need to start for this session by welcoming our sisters and brothers, our special choir, a winning choir for the Catholic Archdiocese of Nsukka, led by Reverend Father Dr. Benedict Abu. I wish to call upon all of us to join me in welcoming this special choir. For the program, you have a direction, everybody. I'd like to rest on this. My pleasure. Practical life, most of the things we discuss past with regards to music, liturgical music. It's a work I've done recently, a research I've done in my doctoral project on how best to implement the recommendations of the Vatican II, specifically Sacrosanctum Concilium document, article number 119, that has empowered us, the mission lands, to bring to bear the understanding of our hearts, even in the worship of God. When the choir finishes performing, I will be able to make one or more theoretical explanations so that I don't keep them standing for too long. That this work is done is meant to be congregation friendly. It's meant to represent the African man in the worship of his God, especially in the liturgy. They are all liturgical compositions. At the aspect of liturgy that I look at, celebrating sense of worship.
not just the cultic or the evangelical sense, but celebrating context. The entrance and the offertory. The songs you will hear. The first one is from Psalm 122. I rejoiced when I heard them say, let us go to God's house. That work came from some ethnomusicological research of the music, one of the most popular music of the Soca people.